In this episode of our series, we're covering a variety of topics. We'll begin by understanding food security and the complex factors threatening it worldwide, how overfishing depletes ocean resources, modern farming techniques, and finally, we'll consider the ethical implications of intensive farming. Food security means having reliable access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food for an active, healthy life. It encompasses not just food availability, but also accessibility, affordability, and nutritional adequacy. A population can have food security even if they import much of their food, provided supply chains remain stable and people can afford adequate nutrition. Unfortunately, numerous factors threaten food security globally, creating vulnerabilities that affect billions of people. Understanding these threats is essential for developing effective solutions to ensure everyone has access to adequate nutrition. Population growth represents a fundamental challenge to food security, particularly in developing nations where birth rates remain high. The global population is expanding rapidly, requiring increased food production from essentially the same agricultural land area. This creates mounting pressure on agricultural systems already stretched to capacity. Changing dietary patterns in developed countries compound this challenge through increased demand for resource intensive foods. As incomes rise, populations typically consume more meat, dairy, and processed foods, which require far more resources to produce than plant based diets. Additionally, globalization means food produced in developing countries increasingly gets exported to wealthier nations. This international trade can improve farmers' incomes but may reduce local food availability, creating food insecurity even in agriculturally productive regions. Agricultural production faces constant threats from pests and pathogens that can devastate crops and livestock. New diseases emerge regularly through mutation or geographic spread, whilst climate change enables pests to expand into previously inhospitable regions. A single outbreak can destroy entire harvests, as seen with locust swarms in East Africa or African swine fever in Asia. These biological threats can trigger widespread famine in regions with limited resources for pest control or disease management. Environmental changes increasingly disrupt traditional farming patterns worldwide. Droughts, floods, and extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and severe due to climate change. When monsoons fail or unexpected frosts occur, millions can face food shortages as crops fail and livestock perish. Rising temperatures alter growing seasons and shift suitable agricultural zones, forcing farmers to adapt or abandon traditional crops. Coastal agricultural areas face saltwater intrusion from rising sea levels, reducing productive land area. The high costs of modern farming create barriers to food production in many regions. Machinery, fertilizers, pesticides, and irrigation systems require a large investment that small scale farmers often cannot afford. This economic barrier means many communities cannot increase production despite having suitable land and climate. Without access to modern techniques, they remain vulnerable to crop failures and cannot produce surpluses for market sale. Armed conflicts devastate food security by disrupting production, distribution, and access. Wars destroy farming infrastructure and relocate farming populations, thereby preventing cultivation even where environmental conditions remain suitable. Conflict zones often experience severe food shortages as supply chains collapse and humanitarian access becomes restricted. Water conflicts particularly threaten food security, as farming consumes approximately 70% of global fresh water. Disputes over river access or groundwater extraction can leave entire regions unable to irrigate crops. Overfishing represents another critical threat to global food security, particularly for coastal populations dependent on marine protein. Fish stocks worldwide are declining due to industrial fishing methods that harvest fish faster than populations can reproduce. Many commercially important species face potential collapse. North Atlantic cod exemplifies this crisis, with populations crashing to near extinction levels despite once supporting massive fisheries. Similar declines affect tuna, sharks, and numerous other species that require decades to reach reproductive maturity. Overfishing disrupts entire marine ecosystems by removing key predators or prey species. This can trigger cascading effects throughout ocean food webs, potentially causing irreversible ecological changes. Sustainable fishing practices offer solutions by maintaining fish stocks at levels supporting continued reproduction. This requires careful management based on scientific assessment of population changes and ecosystem interactions. Fishing quotas establish limits on catch quantities and fish sizes for specific areas and seasons. These regulations prevent overharvesting whilst allowing younger fish to reach breeding age before capture. Net design modifications significantly reduce unsustainable fishing impacts. Larger mesh sizes allow juvenile or younger fish to escape, ensuring they survive to reproduce before entering the fishery. This simple change can dramatically improve population sustainability whilst maintaining commercial viability. Reducing bycatch, the unintended capture of non-target species, protects ecosystem diversity. Modified nets and fishing techniques can minimize capture of dolphins, turtles, and other vulnerable species often killed in fishing operations. Modern farming techniques aim to increase production efficiency by controlling energy transfer within agricultural systems. By minimizing energy losses to the environment, more energy becomes available for producing food. Intensive animal farming restricts animal movement within controlled environments, reducing energy spent on movement. Temperature regulation in these facilities prevents energy loss through thermoregulation, allowing more consumed energy to support growth. These efficiency gains come with significant ethical considerations. Animals in intensive systems often live in cramped conditions. Chickens may never see daylight, whilst pigs cannot express natural behaviors like nest building. Disease spreads rapidly in crowded conditions, necessitating routine antibiotic use that contributes to antimicrobial resistance. This creates public health risks beyond immediate animal welfare concerns. High protein feeds accelerate growth but may cause skeletal problems in rapidly growing animals. Broiler chickens often cannot support their own weight by slaughter age, experiencing pain and mobility issues. Fish farming presents similar challenges, with salmon kept in sea cages at densities far exceeding natural conditions. Parasites and diseases spread quickly, requiring chemical treatments that can affect wild populations. Society must balance productivity needs against ethical responsibilities. Some argue that intensive farming is necessary to feed growing populations affordably. They emphasize that without these methods, food prices would rise beyond many people's means, creating worse welfare outcomes overall. Others contend that animal suffering cannot be justified by economic efficiency. They advocate for higher welfare standards even if this increases costs, arguing that society should prioritize compassion over cheap food. Alternative approaches seek middle ground between intensive production and extensive systems. These include free range farming and rotational grazing, which improves welfare whilst maintaining reasonable productivity. Precision farming uses technology to optimize resource use without animal restriction. GPS guided machinery, soil sensors, and drone monitoring enable farmers to apply exactly what crops need, reducing waste whilst maintaining yields. International cooperation remains essential for addressing food security challenges as fish populations migrate across national boundaries, making conservation efforts by individual countries ineffective. Individual choices also influence food system sustainability through purchasing decisions and consumption patterns. Reducing food waste, choosing sustainably produced foods, and moderating meat consumption can collectively reduce pressure on agricultural systems. As populations continue growing and climate change intensifies, achieving food security whilst preserving environmental resources becomes increasingly challenging. Success requires integrating technological innovation, policy reform, and behavioral change across all levels of society.